Hi, hope you're doing great. In this video, we're going to talk about altering our tables. So that means that we already have a table and we want to talk about altering the kind of global structure of the table. That can be the name of the table or which columns it has. This we can do with the alter keyword, or we can talk about updating specific rows within the table. Maybe something wrong has been inserted or simply some information has changed. Then we can use the update keyword. Let's head into the code and see how this is done in practice. So here we have our code, as you're probably familiar with now. So we create the table called songs and then we insert the values into it. The first thing we can do is simply change the name of our table. In this small example, your initial ID might be like, oh yeah, but then we just change songs here to something different. But that would require us to rebuild the whole table. Then we need to run the program all again and insert all the rows. And when you have 5 rows in a database, that's no problem. In more realistic applications, you don't want to rebuild the whole table just because you want to rename it. Rebuilding the table would then mean that, at least for some period of time, it would be unavailable. And also this might require computational resources. So this is an awful way to do it. Instead, you can use the alter keyword. So as usual, we use our cursor and execute something. And here we have our alter table keyword. So this is saying that, yeah, we want to alter a specific table. The table name is songs. And then we have some options for the next keyword, depending on what we want to do. In this case, we want to rename our table. So then we have the rename keyword. Most of the examples I give today will have very intuitive names. So to rename a table, use the rename keyword. And you specify actually rename to, and then it's songs from the 80s. Maybe that's a better name. All of these songs are from the 80s. Maybe we want to make a different table containing songs from the 90s. Then having just one of the tables being called songs can be very confusing. So let's save this. Let's run it. And here you will actually get something different from me, and that's a bit interesting. Hopefully for you, if you code along, you'll just get, fine, it's now called songs from the 80s. I will actually get, there is already another table or index with this name. That's because I practiced through this kind of video before recording it. So I've already made a songs from the 80s previously, and now I'm trying to rename something to that again, but then it will give me an error saying, hey, you already have a table called songs from the 80s. We're not going to do anything here because you might then overwrite something. What I'm going to do here, since I've kind of messed up and already done this before, is to just remove it prior to running this command. So now, if I run this, I will get now one single table called songs from the 80s. So first I remove any of them if they exist. Again, this is just in this demo case because I'm running the same script multiple times. Then I create a songs table and then I rename it. And just to see that this actually now works, let's just try to fetch something from our database. Let's just select the name from songs. As simple as this. And now we get an error saying, hey, we have no table called songs, but if I do songs from the 80s and run this, then it works. So one thing you can do is rename a table. Another thing you can do is to add another column. So again, let's go to our cursor and execute a statement. Again, this is an alter table statement. Now I need to be careful. Now I want to alter the table songs from the 80s, because that's the only table I have at this current moment. And instead of rename to, I can use add column. And then maybe I can add something called track number, like this. So first of all, let's just see that this works, and it does. And now I can, instead of just selecting name, let me just select all the columns here. Let me fetch them all. And let me just print on this immediately, to see how it's being done. And now, of course, I get all the songs, but you can see now that I get, for the first entry, I want to dance with somebody. It's Whitney Houston from the Whitney album, 1987, the duration. And then here we have a new column with the value of none. So if I just put a new column into my table, it will be automatically filled with kind of non-values or null values. And I think that completely makes sense. We haven't inserted anything or said anything. There is no way, for instance, for the database to know that this specific song by Whitney Houston would be, say, the track number 3. So we need to add that type of information. And this will do with an update statement that I'm getting to now. Before I move on to update statements, I just want to point out that alter table statements, like the two we have here, they're used to kind of modify the whole table as a whole, while update statements are for individual rows. And there are many other things you can do with alter table than what I've shown here. For instance, you could delete a column. And I advise you to just quickly look up and see what you can do with alter table statements. None of them have any complex logic, they're simply just global modifications of a table. So, now we want to update a specific row or multiple rows. So let's actually go into the songs from the 80s and update the Bruce Springsteen song to have a track number of 11. So far, as you can see, we don't have a track number, it's just recorded as none, so let's add one. So as usual, we have our cursor, I want to execute a command. Here I'll do a multi-line one. And typically update statements have 3 lines. One of them is using the update keyword. And then you just specify the table you want to update. Then you specify a clause called set. And this is the new information you want to set. So here I want the track number to be equal to 11. So far so good. And make sure you don't run the command now because it's missing something. And that is a where statement, because we need to specify which row we want to modify. Where? So let's say that the artist is equal to Bruce Springsteen. And for our case, this would be perfectly fine in our small database, but probably if you have a full database of 80s songs, then definitely Bruce Springsteen made more than one song. So this would update all the rows where the artist is Bruce Springsteen to have track number 11. That's probably not a good idea. So you can add another clause and just maybe to make it a bit easier here, we can add some parentheses so it's easier to see. And we want the name of the song to be equal to Dancing in the Dark. Here I think it would be good to specify both the artist and the name of the song, because a different artist might also have a song called Dancing in the Dark. I don't know of anyone who has this, but again, if you have a big database, you cannot really rely on your memory to remember if a different artist has such a song. I think we can be pretty confident that Bruce Springsteen has only one song called Dancing in the Dark. I mean, even actually that might not be true. It might have different versions of the songs on different albums. I would also want to specify that the album should be equal to Born in the USA. Might have a live album, for instance, where the song is just called the same. And then let me save it and run it. And now we get a selection back. As you can see now, Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen has track number 11. So this has been inserted or updated. So this is how you do updating in a database. Sometimes you do the updating on a new column like we did, and sometimes you simply update information that is already present. I think in the example we're working with, then you mostly wouldn't really change information except when it's entered wrong. These are historical records, right? So Bruce Springsteen did make the song Dancing in the Dark in 1984. You wouldn't change the name of the artist. But in other applications, say that you have a database with customer information where the customer has like their email address and postal address and so on, this might change. Someone might move, someone might change your email address, then you need to change the information in the database when you get this new information. I also just want to specify that you can update multiple rows at a time. And that's nothing new, that's simply setting a where condition that selects more than one row. So let's just take this, just copy it, and set the track number to 10. This will just be nonsense, but I just want to make you see that this is doable. So instead of specifying all of this, let's specify that the year should be equal to 1987, because both the Whitney Houston song and the Rick Astley song is from 1987. So if I save it and run it now, then I get track number 10 on both of them. So this is nothing new. If the where clause selects multiple rows, then all of them will be updated. And then finally, before we end, this is a big kind of thing to notice and be careful about. I'm just going to write danger so that we understand the seriousness of this. If you don't have a where clause, so no where clause, then it selects all the rows. This is again no new functionality. So recall when we have select statements just like this, if we don't have a where clause, then by definition we don't filter out anything, so you get all the rows. But the same happens here. So let me just illustrate what would happen here. If I just got this far and then ran the command, that works, and I've changed all the track numbers in the whole table to 10. And that might be awfully inconvenient if I've already spent some time setting different track numbers. Then I set something like this and run it. And before I can think what I'm doing, I'm just replacing all my hard work with the number 10. So in a real database, you have to be incredibly careful with what you're doing here. There are many ways to kind of try to avoid making this kind of mistake. One kind of simple one is to first just write a select statement to get the rows that you want to update. So you select like, yeah, I want to select this from the table where this condition is true. Then you see that you get the precisely the 3 rows you want to modify. And then you just leave the where statements that you've written and then write an update and set condition. In that way, you'll know that you don't accidentally overwrite a lot of information. There are also other ways of restricting that someone can do this, but just from a kind of base functionality of database management systems, there is nothing restricting you from updating all the rows, because, I mean, in some instances, this might actually be what you want. So that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. In the next video, we're going to talk about one of the most powerful keywords in SQL, namely the group by keyword or keywords that allow us to aggregate information. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon.